The platform of fashion, it's society's biggest social mirror of not only what's acceptable, but what's actually desirable. And disability just had no space in there. I wanted to know I was a good designer, not a blind designer, not a good blind designer. One of the first things people always say is, oh, but you've got beautiful eyes, because I don't look disabled. Like, how can we possibly be prestigious and desirable with disabled people in it? It's just not the right fit.
Do you have any sadness about not being able to drive your kids to schools or parties or experience the wonder of the world's beauty together when travelling?
Oh, that is such a good question. You know what? You get exhausted asking for help. It's hard asking for help. My name is Nikki Hind and I am apparently Australia's first blind fashion designer, although I call myself visually impaired or legally blind fashion designer because I do have some sight.
Very nice. Do you like vision impaired or low vision?
I think vision impaired. Okay. But I don't really mind. I know that language is a minefield. Yeah.
Personal preference. I'm going to call you low vision. I'm not a vision impaired, but if that's all right. But
only because it's good to be in the practice of it, right? Because I think for the most part, people would prefer. Do you find to other people who with low vision, or are most of the people that you speak with say vision impaired? It is such an interesting. It's always a catalyst.
It is, isn't it? And because it's such a minefield, and my last name is Hind. My in public, my youngest son will introduce me, and he'll say Hind is blind. He thinks that's really funny. Yeah, so
could be a good idea for a fashion label. Blind Hind.
Blind Hind.
Blind Hind is
blind as Hind.
That is very good. Hey, Nikki, thanks so much for coming. We had a false start actually doing this podcast the other week. Now, you're from a beautiful place called Albury, which is just in New South Wales on the border of Victoria.
It is.
If you're from another place.
It is.
Internet in Albury, not great.
Oh, not great. Not great.
Well, not even that, Dill. You don't know the
before
other.
that.
There was a hiccup before that.
Yeah. Well, so were you trying to blow us off? Do you not want to do this? Tell us what happened on our false start.
The train from Albury leaves at just after 6 a.m, which is very, very early. So there's no chance I'm waking up at 5 a.m. to catch the train. Naturally.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm very prone to setting my alarm for, 5 p.m. instead of a.m. And I triple checked it, plugged it in and woke up at like 6:15 in the morning because I hadn't actually switched the PowerPoint on. I hadn't switched it on, so the phone just went flat overnight.
Sounds
like we got blown off.
Sounds like a better offer.
Yeah. Did you do another podcast that day? It was close at home.
3.
Yeah. I thought you were on Shameless.
Yeah. Or Tiny Island.
Abby Chatfield. Yeah. You were everywhere. Yeah. Right? Whatever it is.
No, it was great to have you, and you were so apologetic. And the reason that we are so appreciative of you being with us in person, and we of course, as people would know, maybe from hearing it or seeing it on YouTube or our socials, that we do virtual interviews, but there is something about having somebody in the room that allows a connection that we've spoken about. We've spoken for the last 15 minutes before this, and we've shared a coffee together, and we've talked about the space. It just kind of allows, rather than a quick, a false start premise.
It's so much better. So, I did have to sabotage my own internet so as it wouldn't work, so as I could come down in person.
Well, guys, you've spoken, Nikki. I refuse to speak to the guests.
Yeah.
Little podcast tip for anyone out there: don't burn your good material before the mic's on. So I see you mute, don't I, Nikki? Yeah, everyone must be like, God, that Dylan's a dickhead. He doesn't really give me much.
Don't talk to me.
Look at me now. I'm back, baby. I'm back.
Dylan, save that for the podcast. Save it for the podcast.
Save it for the podcast. Yeah.
We're just asking what you have for breakfast. Save it for the podcast.
Save it for the podcast.
Nikki, so you are vision impaired.
Yes.
Quickly around, just going back to language, and I won't harp on it for long. We had somebody who identified as vision impaired, and we had DMs because this person, it was one person, said this person should be using the language vision impaired or blind.
I know.
And was telling me to tell our previous guest who identifies as vision impaired. Do you find that people want to educate you on how you identify yourself?
Yep.
And how does that sit with you? Because
you can identify however you want to identify.
I know. No, so, I get antsy and scared around language because, yes, you get corrected. No, you can't call yourself this, you can't refer to yourself as that, and that person can't refer, like in the material that I write or the things I talk about and the people I speak with. Yeah, we get Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's people in the I guess in the communications business, so podcasters and journalists and things that are journalists in particular are very keen to let you know. Well, and I don't know if it comes from further up the chain that they are told you can't refer to people like this, so they then tell us, yeah, this is how
I think they're just worried about getting in trouble.
to.
It definitely doesn't come from further up the chain. They'd have no idea.
There's no education
There is
in
no way
journalism.
they know. But it's like, I'll give you an example. I love the word disability and disabled. And when I meet young people and they go, I'm not disabled, I don't go, well, you are. I just tell them my experience of why being disability proud is important. But if you want to call yourself differently abled or whatever, go nuts. I have no control. And this is my lived experience, how I feel, but you do you, you know? And I think, especially for blind, low vision, vision impaired, same as hearing impaired and hard of hearing, it's just, personal. I'm not either, so I can't dictate what you do. You know what I mean? It's funny how people try and tell you what you should do about your own disability.
I know. Yeah, no, I do get that a lot. Yeah.
And it's funny because at the start for your introduction, you said that you are Australia's first blind fashion designer, and then you corrected the label saying, but I do identify as vision impaired. Let's talk about, that's how we came across you. We've been speaking for about 8 months on the socials trying to organise today.
Hard to get.
Yeah. So was that the achievement, or what was the achievement, or was it like, I can't remember specifically the piece of press that I saw around it was definitely a design or a runway that you had done. Could you tell us about that and your career as a fashion designer?
Well, it was probably Melbourne Fashion Week. So yay, Melbourne Fashion Week, because the year before my collection was at a street runway for Melbourne Fashion Week, Carly Finlay had created Access to Fashion, and it was in conjunction with Melbourne Fashion Week, and it was by disabled people, for disabled people. And it was the first time for Melbourne Fashion Week, and I think it was the first time in Australia. And it hit the news in New York, it hit the news in London. That's what a bizarre concept it was, that disabled people might want to be on the runway and design and such things. So I was part of that. And then the next year, Melbourne Fashion Week actually contacted me, which was very nice. I felt pretty special. And that was, I was really proud of that, because I was in with, mainstream designers. It wasn't disability separated out. It was, my designs were they wouldn't let me have my own models though. I asked if I could have my own models.
Oh, really?
And, yeah.
So what did you have to use? The models that were all working within the...
Which everyone else does.
Okay.
So that's fine. It's just that my label Blind Grit, everyone behind it has a disability of some sort. So I wanted to use...
Was there disabled models in the show though? Some disabled models?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, no.
So talk us about why your journey into fashion. So why did you get into fashion? Was it something that was always a passion? And obviously being blind or low vision impaired, we're all over the shop today. Can you see the clothes you're making? Do people always get shocked when you say you're involved?
They do. People's reaction because I don't think I look vision impaired.
Well, let's pick that up.
Yeah.
Because what does it even mean, right?
Exactly.
So
yeah.
Being blind is actually, unless you've got a dog or a cane, it's an invisible disability. It's like everybody else. For the most part, some people might have something affected with their eyes. So I think, you do look able-bodied. For people who can't see this, check out our socials. And you say you're blind, like people be like, what are you talking about? Do you get that a lot?
They say, actually it's amusing. They're shocked. And one of the first things people always say is, oh, but you've got beautiful eyes.
So weird.
Do they expect it to kind of be like, that glossed over white eyes?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like
Cyclops of X-Men stuff.
Yeah, like glaucoma, or whatever that is. Like, do you know how you kind of have like that cloudy eye? I think that's what people expect.
I think they do too.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but when they find out I'm a fashion designer, so when that comes up in the same sentence that I'm, when I say I'm Australia's first blind fashion designer or visual impaired fashion designer, people have the full throw the head back laugh. Like it's obviously a real irony for people still, which is really interesting. I mean, it's fabulous. I don't mind at all.
Irony, get it? Irony.
Oh, yeah, dad jokes.
That's right. I had to say that.
Save them for me.
All right, that's very good.
That's my kettle of fish.
What about the actual skill of making the clothes? How do you so, I mean, I know it's so hard to say, what percentage vision do you have? Like, what does that even mean? But on the scale of, low impairment to being fully blind, where do you sit and how do you go making the product?
Well, I can see out of the inside half of one eye. So.
And that's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The inside, I'm just trying to picture that. The
inside half?
The inside half of this eye. So I was born.
So your right eye, so like that. Can you see what I'm doing there? Closing my left eye, covering half of my right?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. And still not perfect out of that half, I imagine, as well?
Oh, it's close too. It's still close too, because I had that thing when you're born, one eye was 20/20 and the other one was either really long or really short-sighted. I never know which. So, and often people get the lazy eye, the slight turned-in eye, but I didn't get that. So they didn't pick it up until I was at school. And
it's degenerative as well.
No. Well, it was then. I don't think it will get worse.
Okay.
So that one, and at school when at state schools in Australia, the nurses would come in and do ears and teeth and eyes, and they put the big, the letters up and they cover one eye and get you to read all the letters, and I could read to the bottom, and they cover the other eye and I could barely even see the sign anymore. And they, called my parents, said, "Do you realise she can't actually see?" So they put a patch over the good eye, because I was only 5, to see if they can strengthen it up, but it was too late. Yes, I had the Coke bottle glasses and the patch over one eye, and my sister looked like a Barbie doll. She's perfect blonde hair and gorgeous little nose, and I just was daggy tomboy with Coke bottle glasses. And of course they didn't have anything in the mainstream system, so I would just walk into poles
Didn't sound
in the
like
playground.
Technology was your friend back then, yeah.
Well, there wasn't any. So, and the teachers just had no idea what to do with me. Just sit me up the front of the class and hope for the best. But then when I was pregnant with my firstborn, I had a stroke, which wiped out.
While you were pregnant?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
How far along were you?
Do you know, I don't even know when I had the stroke. And I thought that was so bizarre until I was on a podcast with the Stroke Foundation. They said you'd be amazed how common that is, because I always thought that was so weird. I don't know when I had the stroke. I don't know.
What were the effects of it?
Well, I think only my vision, but you might want to ask my children. Yeah. It's just like a 50-cent piece size scar in the back, and and it just wiped out the processing of the outside half of 2 eyes. So when I do visual tests, it's really interesting. It's like a pie cut down the middle, and you can see on the inside. So this eye doesn't work at all, and the inside half of that one does.
Okay. As a fashion designer, you've been identified as a blind fashion designer.
Yeah.
When you do collections, is that part of the profile of Nikki Hind's work, or do you let the clothes speak and see for themselves? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is it well known that, you're a vision impaired artist?
It is now. And look, I ended up embracing that, because the first collection I created it to send into Marie Claire's Prix de Marie Claire Awards, because I like a timeline. So I just want to see if I can do this. So
Angus actually entered a few times, hasn't had much luck.
Didn't get through. No.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
We were both Clio Bachelor nominees, though.
Yeah.
So we've
And
made
you didn't
magazines
get
in
through.
the past.
That's so cool.
Thank
See,
you.
I've never been a Clio Bachelor.
Yeah.
I know.
We all have our magazine
All good at
moments.
things. All good at things,
Not
Sarah.
these days; they don't exist. But
Yeah.
Yeah. So I created this collection and had it already, sent it in, and got a phone call from the PR manager to say, "Oh, the fashion component's only on every second year, and this isn't one of them." But so I did not get in either. I'm still waiting for a call back from Marie Claire. Marie Claire. Marie
Check out
Claire.
the world.
But when I sent in that, I did not mention that I was blind, because I didn't want them to treat me as a novelty.
The tokenistic.
Yeah,
for sure.
or think, well, she's blind, her designs are going to be shit. Like, what would she know?
Yeah, well
so
said.
I didn't do that. at all. I wanted to know that my pieces could stand on their own. I wanted to know I was a good designer, not a blind designer, not a good blind designer. And I got some nice feedback from them. But then when I started to look around and think, well, like, what do I, if I want to do this, if I actually want to make a business out of this, what do I want it to look like? And started looking for vision impairment within the fashion industry. There was really none. There's a handful worldwide, but I couldn't find any in Australia. And then looking further afield at disability within fashion, and this was back at the start of 2016, and there's been a fairly substantial change. It's still obviously nowhere near good enough, but there was just nothing. So I thought part of, I don't just want to add more clothes to the world. There are lots and lots of clothes. I wanted, because I could design clothes, 24/7. I love doing it, but you want something meaningful as well. So
sustainable.
Well, meaningful as in the platform of fashion. It's society's biggest social mirror of not only what's acceptable but what's actually desirable. And disability just had no space in there whatsoever when I first started.
I think even the rise of TikToks and all that, it's got people with disability the chance to express themselves a lot more, which has obviously been powerful. And a long way to go, but you do see advertisements and things representing us a bit more. Did you know that you were almost accidentally getting into that advocacy space and having to represent a big community? And how was that like when, not only coming to terms with being proud of your disability, but going, I am blind, I'm making clothes and I want to represent, my community?
Yeah. I think you realise that more as you go along. You become an accidental advocate, don't you? And an accidental expert. But I've always been the thing that drives me is social justice. Anyway, I've always been a little social justice warrior. My mum found a little note I'd written, like things I wanted to be when I grew up, and one of them was about social justice. So that was always going to be the meaningful thing that would keep me going when it's really, really hard, because it's really, really hard. It's a really hard business. So yeah, that I absolutely love that, and I very much embrace it now. I didn't think I certainly also had imposter syndrome because I don't look disabled. I didn't know that many disabled people in my life. I didn't feel like I had any right to any kind of voice or platform around disability when I began. So, yeah.
What about, the modelling world, certainly, and that's, knowing friends who are models, dated a model back in the day. It was a very well, no. Well, I'm not saying no. I was going to say, hang on. Let me clarify this for 2 seconds.
Legend.
Gosh, it's better than the same Miss Universe. But
I'm a legend.
No, the reason I said that was I was about to say I've got personal experience with it, and then Dylan was going to say,
and then
Dylan was going to go, "Ooh, what have you modelled for?" Either way, I was copying heat.
Yeah.
I thought it was best to say that it wasn't me.
This is on our socials.
My apologies. So what I'm saying is, I realise the vacuous, aesthetic-based society that causes a lot of body dysmorphia and issues, right? Fashion is attached to that. Do you find quite a judgmental society in your peers? And have you seen anybody behind your back or to your face mention your disability as sort of an outlet for justifying their opinion of your pieces?
It is, yeah. And the thing with fashion is the thing that gives it its strength. Is part of the thing that I want to equalise too, because it's what's the word? It's exclusive, and its power. Part of its power comes from its exclusive. You've got to have that desirability and that prestige to,
create demand. Not everyone can have it vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be everyone, so to speak. You've got to keep that level of prestige. So that, and I find that really fascinating. That you know, and speaking to people in the industry around, because they think disabled people will mess that up. Like, how can we possibly be prestigious and desirable with disabled people in it? It's just not the right, aesthetic. It's not the right fit. So, you know, trying to communicate the desirability and the value and the strength and the aesthetic of disability within the fashion industry, and how that sits with the exclusive nature of it, how valuable and wonderful that is. And I talked myself into a position with Afterpay Australian Fashion Week as the first disability inclusion consultant, because they called and asked, you know, could you give us a hand making Australian Fashion Week more engaging for people with visual impairment? And I said to them, I can absolutely do that, but if you're serious about it, you need people with lived experience at your decision-making table for the whole thing. And, to their credit, they listened and said, could you send through some dot points? I'll present that to the team, and the team loved it. And so, all credit to Afterpay for it. So they right from the start, they had disability at the decision-making table, because it needs to be right through the industry. It's very easy to stick the models in. And it's important. It's really important to have the models in, because that's the social interface, I guess, of fashion. But there's just no way that any industry can be genuinely representative unless there are people with disability at the decision-making tables all the way through. And that's kind of what Blind Grit is about, because I wanted to show people, this is what people with disability can do. Everything here is, all the decisions, or everything is done by someone who has a disability. And I was well and truly told you can't do that, and neither can they. I saw a Fashion Week internal document about how the runway should look in terms of inclusion, and they had used one Dylan Alcott's image in there.
Did they?
And guess what? Never called me, went with Jimmy Jan.
I am loving that Jimmy Jan is becoming the new Dylan Alcott. He's going for it.
They use my image, and then I go, hang on, someone goes, are you walking in this runway? I got sent the thing, I go, I don't even know about this. And then
Next minute, there's Jimmy Jan with a jumper tied around his neck.
I think it's because I'm uggo, or they just thought I was unachievable.
Post-athlete.
Unachievable or ugly?
Ugly.
Oh, yeah.
Unachievable. Yeah.
If you're having shots at me for the last time, I'm coming to you for this.
We're all fired. I'm enjoying this. Yeah.
Also, a question for you is around, I think that's a really interesting point that I haven't thought about, is I think the wider public would look at the Fashion Week and see James Parr, an amputee, walking the catwalk, Jimmy Jan, Chloe Hayden closed out Sydney Fashion Week.
Kelly Cartwright walked.
Kelly Cartwright. So a bunch of disability models, and sorry to the ones that we have forgotten, and they would go, oh, look at this, inclusion of everybody, and size and race, of course, and diversity. Yep. But you're right. What about the people who want to get a job there backstage?
Or make the clothes, or run the runway.
You might have, the models who are blind or low vision, visually impaired.
Social media.
They might be able to test out the catwalk beforehand and feel comfortable, but can someone find their seat? But I looked at Fashion Week, was like, and I am clapping them because, like you said, what a great year of inclusion. But it's funny, I thought, and it is a big step. I know. And, interestingly, the first year that Afterpay did Fashion Week, and they took us on right from the start. So, they had the disability consultant right from the start. And we went in to the beautiful runway, and it's like gorgeous, gorgeous fairyland. It was just magical. It was absolutely beautiful. And the runway had shredded streamers all like this thick all over the floor. Yeah. And I turned to my friend and I said, well, Lisa Cox's wheels are going to get stuck in that.
And old mate fell out.
And what happened?
And Reed fell out of his chair, Reed McCracken.
Lisa's wheels got stuck, and Camilla came on and pushed her, and it created an absolute outcry, which I thought was great. That they freaked out about a little bit, but because people got to see it and talk about it, and the feeling in the room was like that's really great that Camilla came and took over and grabbed and helped Lisa out of the streamers. It was like a sisterhood. Yeah. Like the feeling in the room
go back
was
to the problem.
well, yeah. And yeah, but the feeling outside looking in, people looking at the social media and things, they were furious. But yeah, I mean, that's how do you, like as someone with lived experience of disability out the back doing the staging is instantly going to look at that and go, no.
Yeah, that's a lived experience you spoke about. Oh, you're going to have streamers? How are you going to handle this?
Yeah.
Whereas they just go, this is going to look great.
Yeah,
Got it.
and it
Really
did look great.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I think it's not up for the public to be outraged. It's up to how Lisa felt. The person with lived
that's
experience.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a bit of a storm. That was all over the shop. People were like, that's why you don't have disabled models and blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
I think one of the cool things about, and you know, we're mates with James Parr, is he's not just walking in the disabled show at the end.
Yep.
He's just walking throughout.
Yeah, he
And I think
was the
that's-
most booked model of Melbourne Fashion Week.
Yeah, he was the other year. Yeah. But that's greater representation. It's funny as well. You know why brands should represent people with disability?
Why?
Because we wear effing clothes.
I know.
Like that's
I
why.
know.
First and foremost.
Proof today.
But you should
Dylan's
represent-
clothed. It's
I
rare,
know.
I know.
but he's clothed.
You should represent your customer base.
Yes.
20% of the world's population disabled. We wear clothes.
I
That's
know.
why you should do it, not for the warm and fuzzies of inclusion, right?
No.
But it's funny because probably the last stream of this is probably luxury brands who are like, yeah, it makes disability look a bit. It makes our product look less premium.
Yeah, I wonder if Louis Vuitton feels that way or Gucci or something.
But they're on the way. They're on the way coming. They're coming.
There are. And
But-
Tommy Hilfiger was probably the first to embrace it. He's not quite.
Tommy Hilfiger luxury brand.
No,
You know what I
they're
mean?
not
But
luxury
I'm serious,
brands,
like,
but
I'm
they're
talking
also
like-
not.
They're on
But
Catch
they're
of the Day.
also not like low.
I gotcha. You're right.
You know, they're kind of about in the middle.
I mean, but look, I'm like one of the global faces of Nike. Like that's cool. But
Yeah.
I went like probably the next level. Like I wear Boss
Absolutely.
suits. That's great. But like the premium runways
And they're
around the
waiting.
world and their imagery, I don't know. It's coming because we
I know.
also like luxury brands too. Like everybody, you know. So
It's really frustrating from within because I keep talking about the benefit of leading the way in this space, and they wait and they watch because they are so protective of their brand, as you
Yeah.
say. They wait and they watch and
they
they
don't
want to
need to
see
because they sell it anyway.
they want to see someone else succeed
Yeah.
with it, and
And take the risk first, and then go. All right,
that's
we might
right.
take it.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask you a practical question?
Mm.
Do you make your own clothes?
I can.
Do you
I
try-
don't.
Have you lost a finger when you were on the sewing machine? Because if you
Oh.
have struggled with your depth perception,
I
how did
know.
you go about the creation?
Yeah, with great focus. It's like with really good focus. So I went back to TAFE and learned how to pattern make and how to sew, but I have no desire to sew. I don't want to sew them, but I do want to do pattern making more, and I can't.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
Pattern making is like it's almost like the blueprint of the thing. So you visualize what you want it to look like. Then the next step would be to draw a sketch of it. And then you need to do like specifications. So,
Put it together, sew it together.
well, you need to say, that this bit's this long and this bit's this, and then you do a pattern. It's the thing that they cut the fabric then from. So it's like the architecture of
The architecture, but someone else cuts it.
of
Okay,
the
gotcha.
clothing. So, and I do really, really want to do that, and I can do that, but I can't do it like on the cardboard on the table because I can't see across with the depth perception. I can't see across to where things are. So I really, really, really want the fabulous, the great computerized pattern making stuff, because then you
AI.
can blow it right up. Because, a couple of millimeters makes a really big difference. But, if you make it big on a screen, a couple of millimeters can be like that, and then I can really adjust it and I can center. It needs to be front and center for me to see it.
Dream collab, if you could pick any brand
Oh, great.
with Blind Grid, who would you pick? Collaboration, like any brand in the world to make clothes with. Chuck it out there.
Eric Von, he's an Australian designer. I bloody love Eric Von. If you haven't seen Eric Von, you've got to see Eric
That's
Von.
actually like a realistic potential option. I thought you were going to be like to the stratosphere, but I like that. Do you know Eric Von?
I met Eric Von when the second year I was in Australian Fashion Week, and we got invited to be in the same little like pop-up store thing in the town hall, and all these great new designers, and I went around and saw his stuff and thought, oh my God, and met him. And
Well, I've got a surprise for you. Eric. Come on,
Dial him
Eric.
in.
Eric Vaughn. No, I couldn't get Eric today, but we'll
For
see how we
some
go.
reason, that's Dylan's always go-to. Whenever he says, it's what, like, he did it for Katy Perry for someone last year.
And it worked.
Someone's like, yeah, I love Katy Perry. Dylan's like, well, hold the phone. Katy Perry's here.
Everyone's laughing. Mills is laughing. Everything's good. So,
We should make a montage of all the time Dylan's done that terrible
Dylan says,
joke.
yeah.
But Eric Von, it's out in
Eric
the
Von
atmosphere.
might walk in the door. He is from Melbourne.
Oh, there you go.
well, guess what? No,
Didn't work the first time. I'm like, I'll ram it in there.
So Eric Von's my favourite designer around the world at the moment. Eric Von is absolute kick-ass. So for those of you who haven't seen Eric Von, and his runway shows are, I love Eric Von. Check him out.
I've got a couple of questions for you before we get to the bowl of uncomfortable. This one is completely unrelated to anything except for your vision impairment. What's your thoughts on electric cars? They're quiet. And if you're at a undesignated pedestrian crossing, is that a new fear?
I was like, what are you talking about? That makes sense. Yeah. I was like, where are you going with that?
Well, imagine someone who is blind and they take a step out in the street and part of their cue is to hear a car. That doesn't exist anymore.
I do imagine someone who is blind regularly.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. But I'm imagining.
Yes, yeah. No, because it's one of the things I really struggle with crossing the road because I've got no, I can't judge speed and depth and distance. So you'll see me waiting on the side of the road when there's no cars because I tend to wait till there is one and I go, okay, I know that one's about there.
And I'll block the next one. I know what you mean.
Well, because I know my environment and I think, like that cafe I know is quite a way, so it's about there. So I'll be the one standing on the side of the road when there's no cars.
As sort of a visual cue to see the depth of the car versus the depth of the cafe in the background.
Yeah, and because I'm worried that it looks like there's no cars, but I'll step onto the road and there was one and I couldn't see it because it was moving and whatever. Yeah, so it just does add an extra layer of fear that I'm going to step out in front of a car. Definitely. My children are getting bigger now, but I used to be terrified because I'm a single mummy.
Oh, pram, yeah.
Crossing the road with these little boys, and you hold your mummy's hand to be safe crossing the road. I'm going, God, I can't see the cars.
That'd be gnarly.
Yeah.
I'm the same when I have a kid that just run off and I'm like, bye.
Yeah.
Because what do I do?
Dylan's got a great example about, because Indy's now, my daughter is now like climbing play equipment. And Dylan's like, if I have a son or a daughter that wants to get down, I'm like,
what do I
can't
do?
get them down.
No,
or if they don't want to get down.
More like if they don't want to get down. I don't want to leave. I'll be like, please?
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
My
I'm going to
experience-
get other parents to be like, can you get my kid? Because I can't get him.
And kids never want to leave the
They
park.
never want to leave.
They never want to leave the park.
They'll
Yeah.
learn quickly, Dad can't get me up here.
Yeah.
All right, bowl of uncomfortable. Should I kick it off?
Yeah, we've both got
Mine's
one.
anonymous off Facebook. This is where we ask.
Yeah, I know.
You're a fan. You're a fan.
Thanks for listening.
It's where people ask a question that they would not normally maybe say to your face. Because you lost your vision at the time you had a child, did anyone try to argue you were unfit to be with your newborn alone?
Or did you contemplate feeling unfit?
Oh, good one.
Yeah. No, I didn't contemplate feeling unfit about being legally blind, interestingly. I just contemplated feeling unfit.
Oh, that just happens, yeah.
Yeah,
As a parent, you're like, what?
Yeah.
They just let you go home with this child after a couple of days, you mad people.
Yeah.
It's illegal.
Yeah. And you know what? They didn't know. They didn't know I was legally blind and neither did I.
Because you also had this. Oh, no, you had the stroke.
I had
and you
the
didn't
stroke
know.
while I was pregnant. And it felt like I was losing my vision. It felt like it was.
Did you say to someone, I think I'm losing my vision?
Yeah.
And they were
but not the doctors. And I guess because I was already legally blind in one eye, I was probably more
you don't
comfortable.
realise you're blinder. I know that makes weird, but
and I thought, God, this is worse. This is harder. And I was terrified that I was losing my vision and that I would not be able to see the detail in my children's faces. I was so worried. But no is the answer. And I honestly think a huge part of that is because I don't look disabled. I reckon if I looked blind, people would have been more worried about it, honestly. Yeah.
My bowl of uncomfortable comes from a mum on Facebook. And she asks, you have a son? Do you have multiple children?
I have two.
Two.
Yeah.
You have a son. Do you have any sadness about not being able to drive your kids to schools or parties or experience the wonder of the world's beauty together when traveling?
That is such a good question because it's one of the one of the things that, I do feel bad about it, and I like have the mummy guilt about it, because I really have always had to rely on their friends and our friends either coming to us or being thoughtful enough to help us get to places. So our friends, our close friends have come to us, and things like, we live in Albury and there's snowfields are very close, but I can't get there, and there's lots of beautiful walking places, and it's and just that, my boys are very into theatre and music, so it'll be stuff that's after school, and then they can't get home, and they when they were younger, you're friends with the parents as well as the kids, you tend to be. So I would, have to broach, and you just, you get exhausted asking for help. It's hard asking for help. Everyone knows it's hard asking for help. And to be doing that, just feel like you're doing that all the time. And people don't think to ask, and schools don't really take it into account. There's just a presumption that you can get your kid, when there's an excursion and they've got to be there at 7:30 in the morning, but there's no bus until, so I find that really hard, being the one who's always calling up to say, is there someone else's parent who can go out of their way to bring my kids there, or can this, ask the school, or, my kid can't do, there were theatre things they couldn't do. Yeah, there were things they couldn't do because I just can't get them there.
You got a fair excuse though, so don't feel bad about it.
How do you boys go with that though? They would have grown up in that with, not knowing a difference. Yeah. So I guess they've just always adapted to what they know, right?
Yeah. And look, they very rarely get upset about it. Very, very rarely. And I have to say, they're absolute little legends.
How old are they?
Well, one's officially an adult now.
Oh, hang on. He was the guy trying to fix the internet the other week.
Yeah, he was. Darcy.
Yeah,
Come on, Darcy.
On your Darcy.
Go work on your tech skills, Darcy, but you're great.
Yeah. So Darcy's 18 and Corey just turned 16, and I have to say...
They'll be driving you around now.
I know.
The roles reversed.
I know. Darcy can't be bothered getting his licence. I know.
Well, look at you. So he does the same thing.
Come on, Darcy, help my out.
I know. So I figure, well, I've raised him well enough, because he's obviously not desperate to have the convenience of a car.
Mum doesn't need it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And
thank you so much
for coming in. You didn't, to the point that Nikki didn't want to not miss another alarm that you stayed at a friend's last night close by.
I so
where
did.
Where do people buy the clothes? Where do people check out your gear?
Online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where though?
Oh,
the
sorry.
website's going to be, well, you can say it. We'll put it in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just Blind Grit. So if you Google Blind Grit, it'll come up, but it's www.blindgrit.com.
And on the Instagrams and all that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Right below where you click play on this podcast, we have our show notes with clickable links to everything you've heard here today. Thank you so much for making the time to do this. And you were so apologetic and wonderful, even when it all went wrong last time, that, of course, we couldn't not have you back here with us in person. So thank you so much, Nikki.
Thanks, Nikki.
We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.